What's up everybody? Welcome back to another DIY gym equipment video. In this video, I have a couple options for a rack-attached leg curl and extension machine that won't break the bank. This video was inspired by the Sorenex Mule, which has a small profile and allows for standing hamstring curls. Fortunately, I came up with two designs that have a lot more functionality at a much lower price tag. This project requires tools that can cause serious injury if not used properly. Be careful and be sure to ask for help if you need it. DIY projects are awesome, but being safe is even more awesome. This project starts with cutting the steel tube. I know, a lot of people were hoping for an all-wood version, but this is the best I could do. The steel work is not super difficult, and you'll be able to use a lot of the same tools that you do for woodwork, so it's not too bad. The length of this piece is determined by the distance from your ankle to your knee. For me, it's 16 inches. The easiest way to cut metal pieces is to use a metal saw, but I don't have one of those, so I use my angle grinder with a metal cutoff wheel. It's a little harder to cut straight lines with this, but it gets the job done. Next, I cut the 3/4 inch threaded rod. The length of this will depend on the pads you get. I'm using 8-inch pads, and I cut the rod to 21.5 inches. Now, it's time to drill the holes in the steel tube. You don't need any special kind of drill bit to drill into steel. I drill a 3/4 inch hole for the threaded rod. Close to that one is a 3/8 inch hole for the weight pin. The third one is another 3/8 inch hole, and this one is for attaching to the caster. Here's a diagram showing the hole spacing. I use my belt sander to smooth out the rough edges. The caster is pretty easy to take apart. Replace the wheel with the steel tube and tighten it back up. I remove sharp edges on the inside with a small piece of sandpaper. Insert the threaded rod, add the lock washers, and center it. When that's good to go, add the nuts and tighten. For the weight sleeve, I'm using a 2-inch thick wood dowel. I cut it to 10 inches and move over to the drill press. I drill the first part with a normal length 3/8 inch drill bit. I go as far as I can with that one, and then switch out to a 12-inch long bit. The dowel is so long that I need to raise the table a few times to get all the way through. It is important when drilling this far into something that you have a pattern of drilling and then bringing the bit up, drilling a little bit farther, then bringing the bit up, and so on. That way you're removing the excess wood chunks. Otherwise, they'll get clogged up and cause the bit to get stuck. I round the edges of the dowel with my roundover bit on the table router. You can also accomplish this with sandpaper. Before assembling, make sure your weights will fit on the sleeve. My York plates fit just fine, but my Ivanco and Rogue plates don't fit. The solution is to sand down the dowel a little bit. You can do this with any kind of sander, or even just sandpaper. I prefer to use a belt sander because it's way faster. I hammer in the torque washer, doing my best to align the holes. I use a carriage bolt for this because I like how it sits semi-flush with the end of the dowel. Put the end of the bolt through the steel tube, add a washer, and fasten the lock nut. With all these pieces being different colors, I add some black spray paint to give them a uniform look. This is where the build process splits. Option 1 utilizes a 2x6 spanning the entire front of the power rack. My power rack is 48 inches across, so I measure and cut my 2x6 to 48 inches. In order to figure out where to drill the holes for the bolts, I clamp the 2x6 onto the front of my rack. I make sure it's level, then mark the holes with a pencil. Once those are marked, I use a 1-inch Forstner bit to drill the holes into my 2x6. If you have a rack with different dimensions, you'll have to adjust accordingly. I use 2x4 scraps for the next two pieces. These are small. Watch your fingers. The 4x2.5 piece sits on top, in the center. I use a mending plate to fasten it to the 2x6. The 4x3.5 piece goes on next, also in the center, but on the front bottom. I attach a rubber stopper on this piece prematurely. After putting a few more screws in, I remove the rubber stopper so I can paint the wood. After the paint dries, it's time to make the pads. These are slightly more complicated than the pads I've made previously because they need to wrap over the top. If you're intimidated by upholstery, don't be. I learned how to do it from my Preacher Crow video, and it was super easy. There are lots of great resources available if you want to learn. If you don't want to learn, that's okay too. You can use a foam gym flooring tile instead. The goal is to cut the foam out in the size you need it, then cut the material in the same shape but a bit larger so you have room for staples. In order to hide the cuts, I fold both sides under to fasten them. On one side, I'm able to use my stapler. On the other side, I hammer in black staples. I know it's not beautiful, but it's the best solution I could come up with. I repeat this process for the other side. Here's a better camera angle. Once that one is done, I detach the caster base so I can mark where to drill the holes. I attach the caster base with 1/4-inch bolts. I pre-drill the holes beforehand, and the holes go all the way through the plate on the back. I add a nut, a washer, and a foam pad on each side, then add washers and nuts to the end to keep the pads in place. It easily attaches to the front of my rack. I add a bolt and a nut on each side, and it's ready to use. The biggest benefit of this design is the ability to work both legs at the same time. I use my pull-up bar to perform hanging hamstring curls. Don't go too crazy, or the weight sleeve will jab you in the butt. The design for option 2 is compact but just as effective. The only downside is that there's no easy way to work both legs at the same time. The build process is pretty similar. On this one, I drill through the mending plate with the drill press before attaching it. Much easier this way. I attach the mending plate with a few screws. Remember, there are a lot of screws going into this wood. It can be tricky to coordinate, making sure they don't run into each other. I use 3 lag bolts to attach the top piece of wood rather than 2 screws. The 4x3.5 piece goes in the front with 2 screws going into the back through the mending plate. After painting, the rubber stopper goes on. The foam and fabric pieces are about the same size on this one. I don't want to block the holes, so I mark the line where my staples need to go. What makes this one easier is that the fabric can stretch around the side and be stapled in the back. Then wrap the top and bottom around the back and staple them. Repeat on the other side. Connect the caster base and take it over to the power rack. Unfortunately, I didn't realize the nuts are preventing it from sitting flush. I have a quick fix. I cut down a couple pieces of UHMW plastic, attach them to a board with the proper hole spacing, and drill 1-inch holes. Once this is done, I attach the pieces to the back. Now my rack is protected. You want to tighten up the bolts real good so it doesn't move around. On Instagram, I got a few questions about this that I haven't quite answered yet, so we're going to go through those real quick. What is the weight capacity? I'm able to get 2 to 3 large plates on mine, depending on the size of the plates, so probably 90 to 105 pounds, and I wouldn't go much heavier than that. Is it smooth when loaded heavy? Yes. Can bands be used to help resistance? Yes. Can it be secured with hitch pins? Yes, but it'll be loose. I prefer to use bolts so I can tighten them up so it's not squirming around when I'm using it. Can it be used as a belt squat? Yes. The arm is a little short, but it can be done. Can it be used for calf raises? Yes, but with max weight at 105, bodyweight calf raises are going to be more effective for most people.
What about TikTok?
Oh, we got a question from TikTok. What's it say here? Maybe consider something for those baby calves. Okay, well, looks like that's all we have time for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next video.